Greetings, dear viewers, and welcome to my fan commentary on Power Rangers in Space episode... How far are we? Episode... Date with Danger. Not to be confused with the Date with Danger episode that's also the same title as this in Dino Supercharge. This is the Power Rangers in Space episode, Date with Danger. The episode where Astronema does have some feelings for Zhane, which... this is like one of the first instances where we have a female villain have some sense of romance for a Ranger, where we barely ever see in the series. Even though if you thought that my fan commentary on Stolen Beauty last time was something, here's this episode, because, well, again, In Space did it first. It seems like all the good stuff, post MMPR, seems like In Space did all of these things first before later seasons following it would do it. But that's what makes In Space so awesome, because lately almost every single fan commentary for Power Rangers I've done since 2020 started, it seems like almost nearly every fan commentary is almost an In Space one or a Lost Galaxy one, but I barely do fan commentaries for any other seasons other than those two space-themed Ranger seasons. And even with the exception of Lightspeed Rescue. It's kind of funny. Zhane is cheering on with Astronema, zapping her own monster. I think this monster was in the Mega Ranger footage. Or he must be a hodgepodge of monsters that, No, this monster that's attacking Astronema is from Mega Ranger, but what episode was it again? And then you see Zhane saving Astronema, like, okay, and then you see him gliding off on the Galaxy Glider, even though that's all original footage. And with the horrible terrible monster, that was all Sentai footage with the Rangers. But the five main Rangers are not the focus in the episode. It's Zhane and Astronema. I've noticed that when I was watching Stolen Beauty, there was some parallels with this episode, but again... This, like I said before, this did it first. This jungle environment, they would use this later on with Miranoi, but it's just coincidentally foreshadowing. Whatever jungle environment they used, forest environment they used for these kind of sceneries with them in forests like this. I mean, this is already foreshadowing, every time I think about it, because this was when the show was still filmed here in the States and in California. But it has to be somewhere in California where they were filming. Oh yeah, Koichi Sakamoto directed this episode. At least this is one of the few episodes Koichi Sakamoto directed for Power Rangers that was at least good. But then you had episodes that were questionably good or bad. Yeah, for a first instance, I mean, we hardly ever see this in the show. And with this episode, this was a first for the series where we got a villain and a Ranger and a sort of a romance, of course, which would not last long. They'll do this again later on in Time Force with Lucas and Nadira, but we know how that turned out. I don't know what was... I understand in the days of the show for when I was growing up, when they have some of these drinks for these characters, like, especially the villains, they got to put some puff smoke into the drinks because they want to censor what they're actually drinking. Yeah, and I feel like this kind of romance with a Ranger and a female villain would never come to be or ever happen. But you know, you gotta love Zhane, even though as much as he's a very underrated Silver Ranger, but this was a fitting episode for him. But again, Astronema is still evil, so again, no matter how much you try to make her feel good or try to turn good, but it's just not going to happen. But I like how the season builds up to Astronema. Well, you know, her turning good, but knowing as Corone she is good, but as Astronema she's evil. So it's hard to, you know, that's what I loved about the season is, you know, Astronema's duality. You know, she's good. She was born good, but when she was abducted by, you know, Dark Conda and United Lights of Evil, she was, you know, raised to be evil. See, what really puts me off with the Rangers in this episode, outside of Zhane, they're so eccentric about this romantic lovey-dovey movie that they're going to take the guys out, force them to see. And even you can look at the guys' expressions. Yeah, the girls, you know, again, you know, women and chick flicks and all that. When girls, you know how it is, that feeling in real life where you have your girlfriend or wife drag you to a movie you don't want to see, even if that movie's a chick flick. The guy is like, I don't want to see this. And this is one of another touching moments with Ecliptor, you know, in Astronema, the whole fatherly love thing for him, with him and her. But that's what I love about Ecliptor. And of course, you daydreaming about her. Yeah, you know, you know, I can see why they gotta make the other five Rangers so goofy and stupid in this episode. But the difference is in this season with this kind of episode, the five Rangers are all goofballs, while the sixth Ranger, well, he's kind of a goofball too. And you can see Astronema with a photo of Zhane, and I'm like, where did she get that? See, that's why I said that back in my commentary on fan commentary on Stolen Beauty last time. That, you know, while Astronema has a thing for Zhane, when we had Trakina's similar episode with Mike, you know, again, Trakina never really cared for Mike, but she had him as a foiled plan, you know, as part of her foiled plan to have her monster take beauty from all the women. And basically, while all the guys were crushing on Trakina, but with Astronema, you know, in Zhane, it's like had no idea she had a secret crush for the Silver Ranger, even though she had multiple monsters previous episodes before this where she wanted the Silver Ranger like defeated or something. So maybe she always wanted Zhane the whole time. I mean, Zhane is a fine choice for one of the six Rangers, but why him? But why him? She could have just picked TJ or Carlos. But it makes sense for Zhane because, you know, with Astronema's outfit being all black and silver, she has to choose him. And again, well, I mind Corone doing the human form thing, but at least this is not no beauty foiling plan episode, unlike next season. But this, however, kind of works. Oh, and here's the image that inspired all that fan art of the two kissing and also fan ships. You know, unlike Trakina, this is the only time Corone has ever been outside of the Astronema costume and makeup for at least 2 minutes. Whereas the whole episode of Stolen Beauty next season, Trakina will only be human for at least, like, as from what I counted, like 15 minutes. I'm losing count. How many blonde-haired women in the '90s had that hairstyle? Sure, yeah, I've seen Christina Applegate in the last two seasons of Married with Children with that hairstyle. Who else? See, this is somewhat the same imagery we saw in Stolen Beauty, where, okay, the Rangers are walking around acting goofy and then a monster attacks. But the monster is off screen, and then you see a Cupid's arrow shooting at a tree, aiming mainly for Zhane. And it's Astronema. I thought it was a monster, but no. Oh, love letter with a kiss mark on it. You know, I wish we had episodes like this in Power Rangers again. Sure, yeah, we had this, sometime in Time Force with Nadira's Dream Date, but I'll do a fan commentary on that sometime later. But I just don't feel like it right now. Again, here we are, another episode of In Space with Elgar in it. I keep forgetting he still exists. Is that Coke in those cups? They'll do a similar scene like this later on when they go into the Secret City, that Secret City episode when they were dining out, eating carry out. So after acting pretty super stupid for a few minutes, now on to another Ranger fight. Well, this is what happens when you stand up for a girlfriend and you don't show up because you got something to do. Regardless, all those gifts and flowers, like you were going to be busy doing your ranger duties, and you're going to later on when you show up after that, then you're going to basically stand, stood up Astronema, and basically that's when she's going to break up with you. Wow, it seems like those are the same kind of clothes that Orion would have in Super Mega Force. Well, again, Zane beat him to it, even though this came long before Super Mega Force and Orion. Silver shirt, black pants. Even you got Alpha acting silly, but even though he has to see the urgency of the Rangers getting their asses whooped by the monster, you should have never you should have never threw your morpher on the chair. That's where it was. Now, that rock quarry location they shot for this in US footage does match the way how it was done in the Sentai footage. Basically, if you don't show up for the date, she's gonna leave. We see this cliche all the time when a guy goes on a date with a girl. Though the Mega Ranger episode, from what I saw from this with this footage, was done very differently. Mega Silver was not on a date with a girl, but he had something to do in the episode footage. Oh, so it seems like once you cut his horn, then he grows into monster form. That's random. Without the satellite lasers to make him bigger. Yeah, now she's getting really pissed and irritated and bored. You're stooding her up, man. You should have showed up when you did earlier and not, and you know. Oh yeah, and this was also an early episode of Mega Ranger as well, because Silver Ranger just showed up somewhere around like episode 20 or something. So this was from an early Mega Ranger episode where the Silver Ranger did exist, but this was back when the Mega Rangers didn't have the Mega Voyager yet. So that's why they had to use this episode footage. Which I guess makes sense. Because in some of the episodes they adapt when they do the Silver Ranger stuff in space, there are episodes of Mega Ranger where via footage is where the Rangers, whenever you see the Astro Megazord and Astro Delta Megazord combination, that's because in Mega Ranger, the Rangers wouldn't get the Mega Voyager until like 30 episodes into the Sentai, but in space had the Mega Voyager like probably 15 episodes or so into the show compared to in the Sentai. Now all of a sudden, see, and then watch what happens as soon as she sees him. You know she's gonna pull off, and anyone who's seen this season and seen this episode know what's gonna happen. As soon as Zhane shows up with the flower, she's gonna zap him, and then zap him, and then he's into the mud water, and she finds it funny because, well, she's evil. And it was like, wow, that's just mean. Well, that's what happens when you stand up on your girlfriend. Should have showed up early instead of doing whatever you were doing. Well, now I know how that feels with Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson in Spider-Man 2. When Peter didn't show up to MJ's play, now you know how that feels. But this came out years before that movie anyway. And probably every other romantic comedy of the 90s that had this kind of scenario in the 90s. And even in the early 2000s as well. Yeah, he may have been rejected by Corone, Astronema, Corone, whatever. But at least he'll get with her again later on in the finale, as we saw hints of that in Countdown to Destruction. In that last scene of part 2 of it anyway, ending the series. But then we learn later in Dark Spectre's Revenge when Andros and Zhane was going up to the Dark Fortress to see if Corone is okay. Then when Andros asked of Zhane what was he doing with his sister. Because, well, again, Zhane didn't have Andros' consent for him to date his sister. He just did it did it on his own volition. Because Andros and the other Rangers were acting stupid this whole episode. And even look at that stupid look on Cassie's face. Yeah, man, I know how that feels. Getting duped and dumped. Well, maybe you should have never stood her up. Yeah, you ball up the picture of him, but then you still have feelings for him. Next episode, we learn later she has another photo of him somewhere. Or, no, same photo. Yeah, and also, what's so weird about that is, when they casted Justin Nemo for the series, I just think he is like the Brad Pitt, the 90s Brad Pitt of Power Ranger actors, and that's what he was. So yeah, that was Date with Danger from In Space. It's a great episode. It still holds up, even though parts of it is still stupid, but it still holds up.